No matter where you are in the world, and if you are in the US especially, this has been quite the week. So, first, it was the final stretch of the Olympic Games, and wow, did it deliver on the dreams come true and the drama. But also, the US presidential election race took a very different turn, which got a lot of people, including me, super excited. And this was a welcome change from the frustrated tone of the last couple of months, so that was nice. But the cherry on top for me was the official announcement of our upcoming book of African folklore to be released on March 11, 2025 by Watkins Publishing. And you heard me right. The Watkins Book of African Folklore is our book, folks. This is the MA book because, quite frankly, I couldn't have written any of it without you all. So we did it together, peeps. We wrote a book. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Mythological Africans podcast, where we read and talk about stories from African mythology and folklore. I am your host, Helen Nde. So, first, I'm going to say you will hear a lot about our book in the next couple of months, so brace yourselves. It's going to be fun, I promise, but I'll keep it real with you. The ultimate goal is to get pre orders going, but I also want to make sure I set appropriate expectations for what the book will contain and, get the right amount of hype going. So, preview. Our book has about 50 stories, and they're pulled from all corners of the African continent: North, South, East, West, and Central Africa. And I was very deliberate about this. And the stories are grouped into three sections. So, first, there's the creation myths and foundation legends. So, for my people familiar with the Christian Bible, think of this as the Genesis story for different Africans. It contains stories about how the world in general and humans in particular came to be from the perspectives of different African people. And like I said, all five regions, North, South, East, West, and Central Africa, are represented. And I also made a point to go for some of the lesser known and really interesting stories. Like I have so much love for the creation myths from Madagascar. I have other favorites, and you'll hear about some of them in subsequent chats we have about the book. The second section has stories about human relationships and the cultural institutions that came out of these relationships. And there are some really fun stories here with plot twists like you would not believe. So, definitely one of my favorite sections. Honestly, every part of this book is my favorite. So I'm gonna say that a lot, and you just have to take my word for it. The third section has folk tales about animals, and this was a really cool section to research and write because there are so many folk tales about some of the most unlikely animals. And like, I had no idea how huge hedgehogs are in North African folklore, but there's a whole section about that, and that was really fun to write. And if you've seen the book's absolutely gorgeous cover, then you know that snakes have a big role. And I got quite the education on just how different modern perceptions of snakes on the African continent are from traditional perceptions. And I mean, all snakes, even the venomous ones, not just pythons, who everyone knows, the rainbow snake and all of that. But honestly, all snakes, even the poisonous, venomous ones, have such a different reputation. So we'll revisit that topic in subsequent episodes as well. And my favorite thing about this collection is that I got to dig into the historical and cultural context out of which the stories, their themes, and protagonists emerge. And this is something that honestly came from curating mythological Africans, because a lot of times people would have questions that made me think, is this story really true to the people out of which it comes, or might there have been something in its documenting and its transition over time that made influence it into becoming the story that we know today? And there's a lot of interesting history about a lot of stories. Um, Many folktales, as we know, come from collections written by people who are not themselves Africans. So I felt like it would be good to understand who collected these stories, first of all, the circumstances under which they collected them, and why they may have made some of the choices they made. And it also matters why certain themes emerged and why certain characters exist, and we explore this quite a bit. So Like I said in the July roundup, the newsletter for July, which you should definitely read because there's a promo video for the book, which I really love. There's something for everybody. If you're new to mythology and folklore from the African continent, you can expect exposure to some major themes, creatures, and figures. If you're familiar with mythology and folklore from the continent, then hopefully you will get a better understanding of the different themes and perhaps be introduced to some new creatures and figures. And if you're an expert, I hope you appreciate the storytelling. I hope there's something new that will, delight and interest or shock you. And I hope you all enjoy. That's really, really my most sincere, effort that you enjoy reading this book. So, why did I write the book anyway? Well, first, because the good folks at Watkins asked me if I could, and I said yes. But the truth is that this book has been writing itself since we started building Mythological Africans together in December of 2020. So it's full of your questions, your comments, your challenges, your contributions, cover to cover. It's all you guys said. That being said, I wrote this book for people like myself, right? Africans who wish to know more about the stories African peoples use to make sense of the life and the world, And what's interesting is that having written the book, I feel even less knowledgeable about African mythology and folklore now than I did, curating MA or when I was writing this book. Like there is a world of knowledge out there, and I hope I get to keep writing about this stuff or finding other ways to connect the past to the present. And more than anything else, I really hope I can reach people, African or otherwise, who want to understand African mythology and folklore better so that we can forge better connections as human beings. Because I've said so many times for you, people are probably sick of hearing me say this. I believe that when we connect African stories to stories from around the world, we can really remind ourselves and ground in our consciousness the fundamental truth of our interconnections. And if you think about mythology as folklore as history before history, when you start probing into that far history and seeing just how many commonalities there are, hopefully that draws us a bit closer, reminds us that we're all on this, what they call it, the pale white dot, this big blue marble. We all share this space, and that's how it has always been. That's how it will always be. So we wrote a book, guys. We wrote a book. We did it. And I mean this with all my heart because this book simply would not have been possible without the curiosity and interest of the MA community, your gifts, your donations, and the trust so many of you have put in Mythological Africans as a platform to share accurate information about African people. And all of this with an eye towards really honoring the dignity of the African story, the African stories, the folklore, and all of that. So thank you, MA community. This is our book. This is the first of many thank yous that you will all hear, but it's that simple. Thank you all so much, and go put in a pre-order for the Watkins Book of African Folklore or the MA book, and tell someone about it. It's available on the Watkins website if you are in the UK. It's also available on Amazon and pretty much all the booksellers. Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart, you name it, it's there. So there are pre-order links in the episode notes. I think I'm gonna bump that video in there again because it's really cool. And it comes to the MA theme, like how perfect, how perfect. So thank you all, and we'll be back next week with more regularly scheduled programming. But I had to geek out about our book this episode. So thank you all. See you next time.